So I actually invited two people today. One is Professor Abuwi, who's on the call. If he's able to speak to you all, that'll happen at the end of the presentations. The other one was Miss Mutia from the Special Collections. We'll see if she's able to join us today. If so, then she will be able to give feedback. But since we have all of these recorded, we'll be able to share it with them as well. But Professor Abuwi is the oldest male living descendant of Dr. Booker T. Washington. And we've been honored by his presence for every class that we've taught every time we've taught this class. And so it was on short notice. I'm so happy that he was able to join us today. And all I've asked is that he give some feedback to you all after you all present. So, no pressure, right? So I see that Miss Spencer is here.
Yes, sir, I am.
Awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with you, Miss Spencer. I know we had some technical difficulties with your presentation. You weren't able to launch it. What was the issue? You had to email it, correct?
Yes, sir. I emailed it to her, and then I also uploaded it to Blackboard, but is it possible that I can do like a screen share and try to play it from my computer?
Yep, that is very possible.
Okay.
How to do that. All right, you should be able to access it now.
Good morning, everyone. I am Rejoice Spencer, a graduating senior pre-law political science major, and this is my poster project. So since I am a pre-law political science major, I'm first going to discuss how my poster represents law and pre-law and political science with laws and different things like that. So on the left side in the archives, I found Amelia B Robinson, and Amelia B Robinson was an American activist who was a leader of the American Civil Rights Movement in Selma, Alabama, and a key figure in the 1965 Selma to Montgomery marches, and she received her education from Tuskegee University. On the far right, under the typewriter, you will also see Charles G. Gomillion, and he was an educator, excuse me, and a community activist who worked at Tuskegee University for more than 40 years, and he helped increase African American voter registration in the South. And both of these individuals were connected to Tuskegee, but also connected when it came to law and politics, with Charles G. Gomillion with trying to advance and educate through voter rights, and also with Miss Amelia Robinson as well, protesting for American civil rights. The three books you'll see on my poster is first States Law on Race and Color, and all these books were found in the archives and special collections. And below that you'll also see Tuskegee Institute for the first 50 years. And in the middle, the red book is Race, Racism, and American Law, and all these books connected to law and political science and African Americans developing their own rights and getting equal justice in the United States. So these books reached out to me, especially when I was going through the archives with Dr. Daniels and just looking through different things like that about how political science connected to Tuskegee, and also how Booker T and all these things related back to my major. So concerning Booker T, what is his legacy? I would say Booker T's most lasting legacy is his vision of education. and just wanted true freedom and achievement for African Americans. He really was devoted to education and wanted to make sure that African Americans were not only just educated, but that they also made a good living for themselves and their families, and that they were able to take care of themselves. And he really stressed education and the vital tradition of higher learning. He wanted to help all individuals in the country and just make sure everybody was doing well. So he also felt that education could provide many African Americans the opportunity of advancement, as I stated before, and racial equality. He contributed to the vital tradition of higher learning in this country, and the Democrat believed that a college education should be available to all despite their race or class, as I also stated before. He also developed here on campus the John H. Andrews Memorial Hospital, also with the statue on campus, lifting the veil of ignorance. All of these things are the legacy of Booker T, but what just stuck out to me was his drive for education for African Americans. I stated before when I pointed out the pictures, just the impact that he had on my major. Dr. Washington's impact on my major as a political science major is simply the fact that he cared about African Americans. Politics is a set of activities that are associated with making decisions in groups or other forms of power relations between individuals, such as distribution of resources or status. Washington believed that his vision for Black people would eventually lead to equal and political civil rights. Washington believed that it was economic independence and the ability to show themselves as productive members of society that would eventually lead Black people to true equality. And lastly, I stated two contemporary issues in the Black community and how through his legacy, how Booker T's legacy would be used to address them. And I stuck out the issues of education and also the issue of labor and job opportunities for African Americans. And I just felt that Booker T stated both of these things, that how African Americans should be more educated, and also how individuals should be able to, once they earn an education or even learn a trade, that they should be able to take care of their families and get a job. So these are two things that I stated when it came to contemporary issues in the Black community. And yes, so there's my poster, and on the right hand side I just like the picture in the archives of the typewriter, because I do plan to go to law school, and I just felt like, we have computers and everything now, so it was just amazing to see that in the archives and how things have developed through the years. And yes, that is my poster project. Thank you.
Thank you. Just quick, what did you of the two spaces, which one connected with you the most?
I believe the archives connected with me most. I really enjoyed, speaking with the individual at the archives. Basically, I forget her name. I can't recall it, but I think the archives spoke to me the most, especially when I saw the pictures on the wall and different things like that, especially the books in the room and about all the books with the different laws and everything. I think the archives connected to me the most.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, the next person, let's go with Mr. McKee.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir. Do you want to put yours up, or do you want me to put it up?
I can try to put it up.
All right.
Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Booker T. Washington, let's face it, has a significant image problem. He was possibly the most powerful Black man in America in the late 1800s. But today, sometimes he is not remembered as a slave, even a sellout. His public opinions favoring segregation seem outdated today, despite the fact that he lived through a historic sea change in the lives of African Americans. As the ideas of the most passionate critic, W.E.B. Du Bois gained traction and encouraged the civil rights movement. His emphasis on the economic self-determination over political and civil rights went out the favor. We now know that Washington funded court cases challenging segregation in secret and wrote it in coded messages to defend against lynch mobs. Thousands of African Americans gained fresh hope as a result of his work in the field of education. Yes, he was discreet in his pursuit of racial equality. His 1895 Atlanta Conference speech warned blacks against discriminating and pushed them to prove their worth by contributing to society. He believed that education may provide opportunities for growth, racial equality for many underprivileged African Americans. He proved a significant alternate to more elite liberal arts degrees for individuals who lack the financial means or education background to attend college. He contributed to the country's crucial higher education legacy, as well as the democratic notion that a college education should be available to all, regardless of race or class. As social work been my major, I feel like as if we don't need white saviors. I want to make a change for that young black male or female. I want to provide assistance, conflict resolution, and counseling to students in order to help each child or adolescent develop the social skills necessary to participate in the classroom and learn. I have a picture of Ted Lumpkin. He was a Tuskegee Airman, and he studied social work, but he graduated from the University of South California, and he died at the age of 100. Black men have lower levels of education achievement than black women, and white men. Compared to the white man, black men have higher unemployment rates, lower labor force participation rates, and lower earnings. These patterns indicate that not only a lack of economic power, but also a lack of access to decent healthcare and a lack of social relationships. The problem today we have with jobs help, one of the signs are because the white man is too selfish to help the black man. Cast down a bucket, educating the head, the hand, and the heart. We can build our own schools, build our own jobs, and have pride doing it. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, sir. Can you speak to what's of the two spaces that you visited, which one resonated the most with you?
The archives.
And why is that?
The book I had.
The book that you found?
It was the builder of civilization and the art of self-representation.
Okay. And did you find out anything about Coach?
See, I remember you had told me about it, and I really forgot.
Man, you messed it up, man.
Yes, sir. I did.
So I'm gonna charge you to see if you can get us something on him before we close out the class.
What's his name again?
I'm gonna let you look at it. Hey, man, you gotta go find him, man. You gotta tell us about him.
All right.
Awesome, Brother Cabiness. I see you were able to get your camera moving. You're on mute. You're on mute. And then we'll go with Miss.
Okay.
All
right. I'll say this and then I'll let you continue. I thank you for inviting me to participate, but I want to tell you this. I was a little bit off kilter this morning. Usually I'm pretty good with technology, but I was a little off this morning. I couldn't get on as quick as I needed to. And no excuse, but one reason for my being not so adept was that I was up for about 2 or 3 hours watching the almost total eclipse of the moon this morning. So, that's no excuse, but the fact of the matter is that for you students, I want to give you some advice. If you ever have an important meeting early in the morning, get a full night's sleep, regardless of the reason you might stay up. I think I had a valid reason to stay up, but as you can see, it didn't work out to my advantage. But thanks again. So please continue.
Thank you, Brother Cabiness. I agree. I definitely agree with that. All right. So the next person will be Miss Najula. And do you want me to display yours, or do you want to display it?
Please, yes.
All right. As we wait for it to pop up, just I made the exam that the retake. I made that open for you.
Thank you.
So it'll go live at 10 o'clock. So you have from 10 to 11. Okay. A couple more seconds. Okay. All right. Can you see it?
Alrighty. All right. So, all right. So this is my project, The Legacy of Booker T. Washington. The enforcement, Booker T. Washington's legacy to me is the enforcement of incorporating labor, dedication, passion, and education for the success of African Americans. That's what he taught me being in this class, about the head, heart, and hands philosophy. And another part of his legacy, of course, we're standing in it, the founding of Tuskegee University. So dealing with my major, attending Tuskegee University and learning about Washington's legacy has taught students like myself the importance of putting effort and passion in all tasks that are performed. Washington worked with his students to build this school from the brick up due to the denial of resources. So he had to find a way. He made a way out of no way. As an architect major, this is admirable, and I plan to work arduously in whatever task, and find ways out of no way, because that takes effort to do anything I need. I plan to use the skills I learned and perform as an architect major to the best of my ability, and to give back to Tuskegee and its historic buildings, because Washington emphasized the need of service for character building. I included a picture of Washington because, it's about him. I included pictures of what he stood for, which is education. So I got some pictures of the classroom, some contemporary issues in the Black community I found were incarceration, health, dropout rates, or low academic achievement, and preparing student. I felt this was a problem, preparing students to be workers, kind of, not really bosses or CEOs. To incarceration, I said Washington might teach that hard work and manual labor is essential, like kind of don't cheat the system. To health, I said mental health and physical health are important, and even Washington had to learn this. When I did some research, I discovered that his wife, Olivia Davidson, she passed away, and he attributes her death to exhaustion from her hard work and continuous labor for the schools. So that kind of teaches the lesson, like, you got to make sure your health and your mental and physical health are still okay with working hard, even though you're working hard. Education is Washington's biggest target. Don't give up on it, because it is the base of a successful future. And leave your mark on everything you do, not just enough to get by. Passion is admirable and it's key. I found a few books in the archives that helped me get to where to my final product. Found a book about Robert R. Taylor and Tuskegee. For the fact I'm an architect major, and this Robert R. Taylor helped construct some of the buildings on campus. So I wanted to do some research about him and, you know, get inspiration for his books and things I found at the archives. And then I found some selected speeches of Booker T. Washington, and I included sketch and layout that I saw inside the Robert R. Taylor book that I liked. Yeah.
Awesome. So just a point of correction. So Tuskegee's not the first HBCU, and Washington is not the founder. He's the first principal. So that's just a point of clarity for it. And what was it about Taylor that stood out to you? Hello, Ms. Najula?
Oh my gosh, this whole time I'm sitting up talking. I was saying his drive, how he impacted like a lot of the halls that are on campus, designing them. I felt it as, you know, inspirational, because I'm an architect major, and this is what he did for a living, helped build the layout of the school, the base up. Well, not for the school, but certain halls and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
all right. Well, thank you.
and yeah, the art archives I felt were the most helpful for me.
Okay. Why the archives over the special collections?
Just because, like, from the beginning, when we took a whole tour of it and being able to see like those pictures that were created in there about like the layouts of certain buildings and stuff, I automatically got drawn to the archives. So I just wanted to be in there a little longer, see what I could find in there.
Okay. Well, you know, for everybody, they provide. You can volunteer whenever you want to. So I do encourage that. All right, we'll move on to the next person. So the next person will be Ms. Richmond.
Yes, sir. So I don't think the file you have was able to open, because last class they tried to open it, but it didn't open. So I can share it from my screen.
Okay, please do.
Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I titled my poster Tuskegee Attention. If many people don't know, that's a term that we use in the ROTC program and the military in general, and it's basically just to come to attention. And I will be giving basically an overview of Tuskegee's ROTC program. I wanted to kind of do a spin on my project because a lot of people have already done the political science realm, and I'm also a poli-sci major, but I wanted to take a different route in explaining Booker T. Washington's legacy. So for the pictures, the picture on the top left-hand corner, it is a picture of Robert Russell Moulton. He is a direct successor of Booker T. Washington, and he was the founder of the ROTC program. He was also known as Major Moulton. Another picture is the annual ROTC days. So way back when, they did have actual days designated for the ROTC program, but since then they have been discontinued, but I'm working to reinstate those because I feel as though they are very important to have on the campus. So another picture are the commandants of the ROTC program. So from the left to the right, you have John H. Washington, Major Julius B. Ramsey, and Major William H. Walcott. And under them are the professors of military science. You have Colonel Benjamin O. Davis, Sr., who is also a Tuskegee Airman. You have CPT Charles Ecton, Lieutenant General Benjamin O. Davis, Jr., and he's the son of Benjamin O. Davis, Sr. And then you have Major John A. Broach. And above the commandants is a picture of the Tuskegee Battalion on the drill ground. And at the top right-hand corner, you have the officers of the Tuskegee Battalion. And under that, you have the cadet ranks, which we still use in our ROTC programs today. So for Dr. Washington's legacy, I didn't include a picture of him because Dr. Moulton, like he's literally a representation of Booker T. Washington being a direct successor of him. And at the death of his friend Booker T. Washington, it was inevitable that Major Moulton would be seriously considered as a possible successor to the founder of Tuskegee Institute. Dr. Washington devoted a whole chapter to the qualifications and character of Major Moulton as a member of the executive staff of Hampton Institute, where Major Moulton originally came from. Dr. Washington said that it always seemed to me very fortunate that Hampton Institute should have in the position which Major Moulton occupies a man of such kindly good humor, thorough self-control, and sympathetic disposition. I have learned from Major Moulton that one need not belong to a superior race to be a gentleman. And Dr. Washington also said, Major Moulton, I want you to stand by Tuskegee Institute. It is known that Mrs. Washington indicated that Major Moulton was Dr. Washington's choice for a successor, even though it wasn't officially documented. She knew that this is what Dr. Washington wanted. So how it relates to me as a person, well, like I said, I'm in the Air Force ROTC program. So all of this is my being for being at Tuskegee University. I originally wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, but God had different plans for me. So I ended up here at Tuskegee University. And I came to this program because of the rich history for the Tuskegee Airmen. As you see, I do have one of the books that I found in the archives that says Moulton Field Tuskegee Airmen Special Resource Study. And the legacy, it continues with me today because next semester I will commission as a second lieutenant and I will be representing the detachment where I came from, DED 015, which is the home of the new Tuskegee Airmen. So for contemporary issues, I said a sense of belonging, which is something that the Air Force prides itself on because a lot of times African Americans don't feel as though we have a place where we can belong. And being in the ROTC program, it is instilled in me that we do belong and we have a great presence in this world. And also job opportunities. Like I stated before, once you join this program after the end of your 4 years, you're guaranteed a job. Like I'm guaranteed a job. I'll be an intel officer, and that's something that I can attribute to the ROTC program, Dr. Washington, and Dr. Russell Moulton as well. And that concludes my presentation.
Awesome presentation. And I like how you connected the dots between Dr. Washington and Moulton and showing that legacy. You thought outside the box with that because oftentimes we think just to say the legacy means I have to say Dr. Washington and really kind of focus the attention on him, but the fact that Moton, in essence, is his legacy because he was tapped by Washington to be his successor. That's huge. I also like that you talked about the history, the military history at Tuskegee, because it's really significant. Between Benjamin O. Davis Jr., I believe was the first was he the first one-star general?
He was the first African American general for the Army.
Yes, and then his son followed suit. And for those who his story when he was at West Point, right?
Yes, sir.
So would you mind sharing that with everybody?
I'm not the most well versed in it, but I know a little bit about it.
All right, tell us what you know.
I'm trying to remember because I don't want to say the wrong things.
Nothing is wrong. We'll just have you might have some corrections and modifications. You want some help?
Yes, sir. All I know pretty much is that they dedicated a set of barracks to him.
Okay. That works. That works, right? That's something that's important about him.
And he's the first Black cadet at West Point, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
He they also gave what's called the Wall of Silence. So for 4 years, his 4 years at West Point, no one ever spoke to him.
Okay.
So when you think about that, I mean, imagine walking around Tuskegee and nobody speaks to you. That's kind of tough.
Yes, sir.
And then the fact that he launches the Tuskegee, he's here, is pivotal in the creation of the Tuskegee Airmen. And you have him and his son. That's huge.
Yes,
So one other thing. So John General Welch. He's also this is just a little historical component for you. He was a professor in architecture. He directed the architecture program, and he is also one of the architects of record of the current Tuskegee Chapel. So yes, when you walk by that chapel, you can smile a little bit better, a little bit bigger, knowing that one of the former directors or professors of military science is also one of the architects of it, and is considered one of the greatest contemporary works of architecture in the state of Alabama. So,
yes.
And I'm gonna give you a name for you to look up. This is just for your own edification. There's a gentleman, they called him the Brown Condor, John Robinson. He's considered the original Tuskegee Airman before the airmen were airmen. He was a graduate of Tuskegee, taught himself how to fly a plane, made his own plane, and because of his abilities, he eventually wound up going over to Ethiopia and trained Haile Selassie's army during, I think it was World War I. And as a result, the Ethiopian army was able to, they were able to have an air force, and so he was the first American to actually fight in the Axis wars because he was helping Ethiopia defend its country from Mussolini when he was invading.
Yes,
So
sir.
yeah, check him out.
Yes, sir. And I'm glad you noticed that I was trying to not necessarily steer away from Booker T. Washington, but I wasn't trying to make him just the forefront of the project. I wanted to, because one thing that Mr. Chandler in the archives, he said that do something out of the ordinary, like don't just put what people are used to seeing out there. So I didn't want to just put Booker T. Washington on there and just basically ride on the coattails of Booker T. Washington. I wanted to show the product of what he did.
That's extremely important because when we're talking about his legacy, you're part of his legacy as well, right?
Yes, sir. I just didn't want to put a picture of myself on there. So.
No, I would have. I mean, you got to claim it. You got to own it, right?
Yes.
We're all part of his legacy. I'm part of his legacy. Brother Cabiness is a part of his legacy. All of y'all in the class are a part of his legacy. So claim it, own it, put it out there. And what you want to do is connect the dots. So like you noted, Moten is a part of his legacy because he's his successor. He's the man who's tapped to run Tuskegee upon Washington's death, and he takes over and he continues. And there was an incident, just speaking about that legacy when you may or may not be aware, but under Moten is how we got the VA hospital. When the VA, you know that, right?
Yes, sir. It's in his book, the book that I had on my poster, the Robert Russell Moten of Hampton and Tuskegee.
Yes. So at that time, the VA hospital was the largest VA hospital for African American. Sorry, the only VA hospital for African Americans, I believe, in the Southeast, and the largest in the country. And Tuskegee gave the land. Well, with giving the land, Moten also demanded that Black people be in charge of the money, the administering of the money. And the White Citizens Council of Tuskegee met him in his office one day and told him he had a choice. He could either make sure that there was a white man who was in charge of the money, or they would burn down Tuskegee. And they asked him, and this is just paraphrasing, how do you feel Booker T. Washington would feel about you burning, being the one responsible for his dream being destroyed? And Moten said, well, if that's what needs to be, that's what needs to be, but I'm not gonna go against the wishes of Booker T. Washington. Eventually things subsided, and a Black administrator was put over the VA hospital because they decided that they'd rather have Black people touching green dollars than white women touching Black bodies. So, but something else that was significant about that is Benjamin O. Davis, who was, as you've already noted, over the ROTC program. He came to the defense of the campus and had the students hit the armory and stand guard to prevent any activity, adverse activity to the campus. So, the ROTC program has been more than just, a program for folks to get scholarships. The ROTC program has been instrumental in also preserving the longevity of our campus.
Yes, sir, because something that I didn't know was that they used the ROTC program as security for the campus. I found that out in, I think the book I had on there is the pre-war days at Tuskegee. That's when I found that.
Man, might need to return to that. Yeah, that's great history. Great history. I love when I learn some new stuff. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. And which I take it you liked the archives the most?
Yes, sir. I like the archives the most because it had more specifics as far as the military went. Okay. Because the special collections, it was a great tool to use for like the overall for Booker T. Washington's legacy, but to hone in on what I was specifically looking for, the archives helped with that a lot better.
Awesome.
And can I submit this again? Because the other one won't open, or can I email it to you?
Yes, you can do that.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go with Miss India Scott, and then our last one will be Miss Kayla Wade. Was there anybody else? I just want to make sure I didn't overlook anybody. Okay, so Miss India Scott, you're up.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, give me just a moment. All right. So for my presentation, I titled it Breaking Social Stigmas, because I think that's what Booker T. Washington basically did for African-American people and also for students. So Dr. Washington's legacy, Washington's education philosophy, is a part of his legacy he has left behind for people of color and Tuskegee Institute. The education philosophy of the head, hand, and heart
has contributed to his legacy for Black people to be knowledgeable, to persevere, to establish humility, and to have determination to do the very best despite the difficulties as a race Black people have faced. Washington states, a true education is when you take it out into the community. From understanding, Washington was indicating the only way to be of service is to go out and address the need and build a curriculum on that. His legacy of casting down your bucket was referring to the resources Black people have at their feet. They just have to use it to their community's advantage. In conclusion, Washington's grappled at the idea of success and knowledge is not measured by the position one has received, but by the obstacles one has overcome while trying to succeed. His impact on architecture was very extreme. Above, I have some names that impacted architecture on Tuskegee University campus was Robert R. Taylor, David A. Wilson, and Emmett Scott. Robert R. Taylor was the first Black architect. His reputation of blending art and science that Tuskegee architectural beauty and coherence is known for. He has built the chapel, the Science Hall, Thrasher Hall, and also the Science and the Thrasher Hall was constructed by students and was the first building of Taylor's. And he also constructed the Oaks. David Wilson was the nation's first African-American landscape architect, which Booker T. Washington has what he decided to ask for David Wilson for Tuskegee Institution. And then Emmett Scott was his personal secretary. He didn't really do much, but he did have some influence on Booker T. Washington. And so with the impact on architecture, Booker T. Washington talks about the dignity of labor, the love of doing a good job at any kind of manual work. It should emphasize the progress of making and bringing value to the community. Washington's impact on the major has showed me not to think of architecture as a task or make the rift between workplace and home. Architects would generally have a work office and a home studio, physically and mentally speaking. Work consumes one life. It leaves no effort for a self-governing workshop that may be having my own form, becoming an independent contractor, designing furniture, or even doing projects around my home. These interests slowly start being delayed because of the focus of my career. But once I sustain a hobby, it can intermingle with the workplace and home. From interpretation, architecture is slowly focused on the practice of designing habitable buildings. It is important to be able to compose of structurally sound buildings, but Dr. Washington has made me realize the end goal is not to just complete a service, but to be of service. To me, Washington wanted me to understand my inspiration to be a residential architect is not for me, but for the success of the Black community. And that's one thing that I have to get through my head, that it's not about me or like about my work, but to make an impact on the community. Issues that are currently affecting the Black community is the lack of determination, dignity, and the mindset of only looking out for one's own interests. People of color would jump to the argument that they lack resources to even start rebuilding communities. If Washington has taught me anything, it was we have the resources at our feet. It just need to be taken advantage of. People of color are convinced that they don't qualify as being worthy, so they're prone to think that what they have to offer is not good enough. And so with me, my personal story is before I came to Tuskegee, I was at a PWI and I thought like my work didn't matter, like my voice didn't matter and what I was making was like not good enough. But coming to Tuskegee and like learning about Booker T. Washington, it's like everything matters. You know, I have an impact on everything and what I make is as good as better than anybody else. One of the books that I got from the special collections was the Booker T. Washington own story of his works and life book. And so he states that the Negro youth must work harder and perform his tasks even better than a white youth in order to secure recognition. But out of the hard and unusual struggle through which he has compelled to pass, he gets a strength, a confidence that one misses whose pathway is comparatively smooth by reason of birth and race. So like what I just stated from Booker T. Washington's own story of his life and work is that I definitely will have to work harder. But out of that, you know, it's the dignity of labor and like doing what I love. And that's what I learned from the legacy of Booker T. Washington.
Awesome. 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 Um, quick question. You have Emmett Scott up here. What role does Emmett Scott have on architecture?
I totally forgot. But I know what I read, like I know it was like.
What about Williston?
What I got on Williston was he was the nation's first African American landscape architect. I think he helped do some work on the campus, but I'm not totally sure.
Okay, that'll work. I'll run with that. So Emmett Scott, I figured I might learn something new about Scott in architecture, but from how I understand, so Scott was Booker T. Washington's personal secretary. So his administrative, secretary. He wrote a number of books with him, which one of them was I think Black Diamonds or Tuskegee's People. Either way, he was his personal secretary. Wrote was responsible for some of the writings. He was with Washington for a while, so I'm not as familiar with him having any role within architecture, but he did have a role in terms of documenting Washington's work. Williston, you're correct. He was the first professionally trained or formally trained landscape architect in the country. He also worked directly with Dr. Carver. So Dr. Carver would tell him, would get plants. Williston would place those plants in other. Williston had designed how the campus would be addressed through landscaping, and worked hand in hand with Dr. Carver, who would give him plants that he would get as gifts, and would take those plants and install them around the campus. A couple of areas that are important for Williston to be aware of is that everybody knows where the yard is, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so the yard was Williston's creation. He wanted to create a space for Tuskegee students to be able to assemble. As Ms. Richmond noted, with the ROTC program, there used to be demonstrations. The yard was the place where demonstrations occurred for the. That's where the military would do its drills. And that was all Williston's design. There was a building that was there called Alabama Hall. That was the first brick building built on campus. It was dismantled, and Whitehall was created in its place. And as a result, they created this courtyard, as we would call a quadrangle, that allowed for many activities like ROTC, military drills, student life to engage on campus as we do now, and graduations used to happen there. He also was responsible for creating, let me see if Mr. McKee, did you find out the name of Coach?
Yes, sir.
What was his name?
Cleveland Lee Abbott.
And what did you find out about him?
Well, he really did a lot. Like, he was a first lieutenant in World War I. The U.S. Army Reserve Center at Tuskegee is now named after him. He was agricultural chemist and an athletic director, and he even coached here.
And what about his coaching legacy?
He had 6 athletes competing in the U.S. Olympic track teams.
Wow.
He coached football here.
How did he do with football?
He did an amazing job in football.
Tell me something about it.
His team had went 202 and 95 and 27, and he had 6 undefeated seasons.
How many championships he won?
I don't see the championships.
All right, see if you can find he has more championships than
Nick Saban.
So and I asked that because the stadium that you play in, that we all visit and cheer at, is named the it was Alumni Bowl now, but it was actually, I'm not sure if it's Alumni Bowl now or Cleve Abbott Stadium, but it is Cleve Abbott Stadium has been affiliated with it. So David Williston is responsible for designing the landscaping, and if the area around the bowl that people sit. For those who've been here and seen the homecoming, you know how it's terraced and people can sit in a tailgate in that area.
Yeah.
So David Williston is responsible for that design. And the last one that impacts us today that we still are appreciating, one is the traveling up and down the Ave. Williston is responsible for specifying to put planting trees that would mature along the Ave. So as we walk up and down that promenade, as the seasons change, in the summertime when it's nice and hot and we're trying to get under the shade, every time you walk under that shade, you need to thank Williston and Dr. Carver for that. Additionally, the location where the monument is located, he created that node. So the travel from the Ave up in east to west, and then traveling north to south as you go through campus, Williston wanted to create a plaza that would be bounded by Dorothy Hall, the chapel that Taylor created, and at the time it was the Memorial Trades Building, which is in the same location as the Wilcox Trades buildings. So at the intersection of that, he wanted to create a plaza, and in his master plan, he did a couple of master plans for the campus. In his master plan, he specified that there would be some sort of plaza right at that intersection. And so when Washington passed away, that's why they placed the monument in that location. So that's Williston. You already talked about Taylor. So good stuff. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. McKee. Thank you, Ms. Scott. And then last, definitely not least, Ms. Wade.
I'm going to share my screen. And
All right, bring us home, Ms. Wade. You get to close us out. You ready?
I have a video. So
Okay.
sure.
All right, raise the bar. Make sure you
Okay.
click when you go to share, click share sound at the bottom left so that we can hear your video.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Kayla Way, and today I'll be presenting my Legacy of Booker T. Washington project. The first topic I will discuss is Booker T. Washington's legacy. Booker T. Washington earned his legacy as one of the most important figures in the Black community as he has worked his way up from slavery and emerging as an iconic man. Washington worked restlessly to create better educational resources for the Black community and to raise awareness of Black issues. With his hard work, Washington established the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, which became a leading school in the country and granted African Americans proper education in the South. Along with his hard work to provide a better life for the Black community, Washington was also the first African American to be invited to the White House and the first African American to appear on a postage stamp, which were both an incredible moment for himself as well as the Black community. In the middle, I have images of Booker T. Washington as well as his postage stamp. To the far left, I have his headshot, and to the far right, I also have him giving a speech. The next topic I will be discussing is his impact on architecture. Washington significantly impacts the management of architecture with each building that has been established on the Tuskegee campus. By looking for people to fund the school, it has expanded the campus more and more. Washington has played a great role in the architectural background of the Institute. Washington recruited African-American architect Robert R. Taylor, and they both will work together to use his designs and administrative skills to further Washington's agenda of community solidarity. Washington's activism, along with Taylor's architectural vision, created identity for the Tuskegee campus. Although Washington was not an architect himself, he contributed to each building on campus with his networking to help grow the Institute. At the top, I have an image of Tompkins Hall, which is just an example of architecture that still stands on campus today. Next, I have an image pulled from a special collections book that shows former students working in a studio from Tuskegee. And to the far right, I have an image of design by Robert R. Taylor, also pulled from a special collections book. The next topic I will be discussing is special collections and archives. The special collections and archives were filled with fascinating artifacts and books I have never heard of or seen before. Robert R. Taylor and Tuskegee was a book out of a special collections that walked through the life of Robert R. Taylor as he becomes one of the most famous African-American architects in the world, alongside Washington, who trusted him with the design of Tuskegee, which shows his contribution to Black workers. The Negro of Today discusses the everyday life of a Black person during a time of segregation. In the book, it gives insight on the making of Tuskegee and how Washington succeeded in doing so. The picture of the building also represents a drawing that was created when developing the design of Tuskegee. In the middle at the bottom, I have images from the collections I looked at with my trips to the special collections and archives. I have the Robert R. Taylor and Tuskegee, the Negro of Today, and a building I took a picture of in the archives when we were looking around. And to the bottom right is an image of a page I took from Negro of Today, which just discusses the upcoming Tuskegee as well as the financial upcoming that I thought would have pretty important. Lastly is I'm discussing how Booker T. Washington can impact the Black community today. The Black community faces many contemporary issues such as lack of opportunity and safety with the lack of jobs and the high incarceration of Black men. Washington believed and taught that the label society gives you does not have to be a reality. As he worked his way up from slavery to make a name for himself, it exemplifies his hard work and character. With learning Washington's philosophies and lessons, the approach to these issues would be to work as a community and to educate one another to learn the impact of these issues today. In Washington's speech, Teamwork, he says, "I want to emphasize the importance of teamwork in an institution like this, people working together with a common end in view." As a reader, it can be evident that Washington believed in a community working together to get what they wanted, as he did with the upcoming Tuskegee. He used the community to build these schools and to give Black people their proper education. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. So just one thing to share with you. The gentleman that's in this picture in the middle on the top, any chance you know who that is?
In the middle on the top.
The gentleman standing up, teaching the class.
I do not.
Okay, so that's Wallace Rayfield. Wallace Rayfield was a professor. He graduated from Pratt Institute in Columbia, and he came to he was recruited by Booker T. Washington to Tuskegee. When he left, he went on to do work in some work in Montgomery and Birmingham predominantly. So most of Black Birmingham was designed by Wallace Rayfield. 16th Street Baptist Church, which we all know for the 4 little girls when the church was bombed. He designed that church. So he was also, he had that church, and he also had the Day Street Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Both of those were instrumental in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. His work at Tuskegee was really focused around institutional work, residential work, and religious facilities. So when he left Tuskegee, he also did so he went into business for himself, had a mail order catalog where he sent it all out nationally. People would hire him to do plans of churches and residential spaces. And he marketed himself as being a residential, institutional, and religious architect, and that all came because of his involvement with Tuskegee. So just a little bit more for you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit more about the Negro of today. That's a new one for me. You just put me on some new stuff, so I'm happy. Tell me about that.
It went into like Booker T. Washington, also like I feel like, is it Du Bois? What's his name?
Mm-hmm. W.B. Du
I
Bois.
think he was also mentioned in that book, and it was really just talking about like Tuskegee. I think they also mentioned Roosevelt, and it was just like the upcoming of Tuskegee, and it also has some. It was talking about like the page there. It was like talking about like financial things from the book, and I kind of skimmed through it. I didn't read it thoroughly, but I know it had some important names in it.
Okay, that's fine. Everybody wasn't required to read them thoroughly. Wanted you to get some resources. Can you tell me about the photo, the rendering? What was it about that stood out to you?
The building, the drawing of the building.
Yes.
I thought, I don't know if it's honestly a building. It looks like the building like near the softball fields, but I don't even know if it's still standing, truthfully. But I just thought it was cool because when we was walking through the archives, it was like pictures on the wall. And so I just thought, like, being an architecture major, I just thought the drawing was real cool because like if I'm drawing, I kind of want to get to that level. I just think like the either use of like, the trees in the background and everything like that. I just thought it was a cool building to take a picture of and document.
Awesome. So that's Basil O'Connor Hall. That's the nursing building. If you're driving towards bioethics, it's the last building on your right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that shot. I think it's coming from the valley looking up.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, brother Cabiness, what do you think? We've gone through the last of the presenters, and so while you didn't get a chance to see all the other ones, I think these were a great representation of the quality of work the students have done this semester.
Well, thank you. First of all, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this is being recorded.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I will access the recording so I can see those that I unfortunately missed this morning. Now, this is what I think. I admire you greatly for the work that you've done for a number of years in terms of reigniting the spirit of Booker T. Washington on the campus there. Having grown up on that campus, actually, that is the original playground, you might say, as a child that I enjoyed from the time I was about 3 or 4 years old. You mentioned the valley, and I recall as a lad of about 4 or 5 years old, log rolling myself down one of the slopes from the campus avenue. We used to call it, now it's Booker T. Washington Avenue, all the way down, to the bottom. But the thing I want to say about the presentations is that I am fascinated by the passion of the students that I could feel as they gave these presentations, and I can envision them working diligently, arduously, and rigorously to prepare these presentations. So that says a lot about you as a professor, Dr. Daniels, encouraging them to do their very best. And it says so much about them in terms of their aspirations for success. Now, without giving a lecture or giving a speech, I want to say something that I've been thinking about throughout the presentation. I'm a historian, a professor of history myself at Augusta University in Augusta, Georgia. And history has always been something that I loved, even as a child. And as a student at Tuskegee back in the 60s, I was excited and encouraged by a visiting professor from Harvard who was so eloquent and erudite in his lecturing style that it just put a spark in me that made me want to do that at some point in my life. And I've been doing it for a number of years. But having spent the last 40 years of my life, and I'll be 78 years old in 2 weeks, going throughout the country, talking about my great grandfather, Booker T. Washington. My mother's grandfather was Booker T. Washington. I've run into a lot of questions about him, which I refer people to his works and historical works to answer those questions, even though I can answer a lot of them. But nowadays, I don't speak so much about his history, since there's so much written about it that people can read. I speak about his vision that still has yet to be fulfilled. I did see some of it when I was growing up at Tuskegee, not just on the campus, but in the community. But that vision has been shadowed and eclipsed by other factors. And I mentioned about the eclipse that I watched, almost a complete event, not the resolution of it where the moon actually was exposed again, but when it completely almost became darkened. And I thought about the term eclipse and how a shadow can pass over something bright. And that's what happened to Tuskegee. That's what happened to the community especially, but it also happened to the institution. And it's true that Booker T. Washington didn't actually found the school. Lewis Adams actually founded the school in a sense, but it wasn't just him. It was the community of Tuskegee. And that's an understated fact. But people went to Lewis Adams because he was a community leader. He was a member of the Masonic community, which had a lot of influence, as it still does in most Black communities. But he was also a member of his church, an active member of his church. I believe he was the trustee of his church. And he was a go-to person. If somebody needed, for example, someone to go downtown and speak to the white leaders, Lewis Adams was the person they would go to. He had that kind of respect and influence. So the people went to him and asked them to help them to get a school to train teachers so that their children and themselves could be educated. So it wasn't just Lewis Adams, it was the Tuskegee community that founded the school. And then they brought Booker T. Washington to build it. And he helped him, Lewis Adams helped him. Now, there's so much that has been lost, and I'm glad the students today have brought a lot of that back into focus. But the overshadowing and the eclipsing of Booker T. Washington's vision for many years was almost complete. And as a result, and I watched this since the 1960s at the height of the civil rights movement in which I participated. And as a student at Tuskegee, I participated in a significant march right around the time of the Selma to Montgomery march. The Tuskegee students went to the Capitol to protest what was happening all over the county and all over the state of Alabama concerning Black people being beaten and refused the right to vote. But the fact of the matter is that when I think about the spirit that we had, and we had differences, but we came together to fight for freedom. And yet I was so happy that the governor in Oklahoma gave this reprieve to Julius Jones. I prayed, I got on my knees and I prayed that that would happen, because I think the Black spirit would have been crushed if they had executed him. But so many people are being executed by our own people every day. So my point is this: the spirit that I sense and I feel and that I know is in your students needs to stay strong. And what you're doing by provoking and providing and pushing and raising them up is so significant. We need more leaders like yourself. And in closing, I want to say this. That work that you're doing and the students have done has to continue. This vision that is historically represented in the projects has to be spread because we're not there yet. We're not nearly there yet. The vision that Booker T. Washington and Lewis Adams and others saw of us being a city upon a hill, a beacon light for not just the Negro or Black people of the South, but throughout the world, has so far not been realized. It's going backwards, unfortunately. And we've got to break through what's happening, this materialism and this selfishness that one of your students mentioned, that she wasn't looking at this as being about herself, but about our people. I'm paraphrasing. So I'd like to just leave you with this thought. Every one of us should be a Booker T. Washington or Margaret Mary Washington or Olivia Davidson Washington. And there's so many others that were there. Lewis Adams, you mentioned General B.O. Davis Sr., B.O. Davis Jr. We all need to come up within our own souls to that level. Every one of us can be great in our own way in whatever we have chosen to do as architects, as myself as a historian, as Dr. Daniels as an educational leader, and try to put ourselves in a position where the world will look up to us, not to give us a sense of pride and certainly not arrogance, but a sense of service so that we can change the dynamic and rewrite the narrative. And I want to say this, and I can't leave without saying this, and I want to ask your students, if you have time, to just tell me, why do you think Booker T. Washington, a generation after the end of legal slavery, was still talking about our people coming up from slavery? And why do you think that it's so important today that we still think in terms of coming up from slavery, which has been over legally for many generations? I would like, if you want, to let your students, briefly, succinctly reply. I'd like to hear what's on your mind.
So can somebody answer that question? So I'll rephrase the question. Professor Cabiness asked, why do you believe that Booker T. Washington, 30 years after the end of legal slavery, was still speaking about coming up from slavery over the course of 30 to 65 years after the end of slavery? And then why today do we continue to still speak about coming up from slavery, recognizing that it's been over for over 150 years? Does anybody have a thought on that?
Let me go ahead and take it.
Let me pick on somebody real quick. Let me see. Miss Ballard. I'm gonna pick on Miss Ballard real quick. You with us, Miss Ballard? Not Miss Ballard, and I'm gonna pick on Miss Richmond. You there, Miss Richmond?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Can you repeat your question, please?
Yeah. So why do you believe that Booker T. Washington, 30 to 60 years after slavery, was still speaking on coming up out of slavery? And then why do we also continue to have that conversation today, over 150 years later, about coming up out of slavery?
Because it's a recurring thing. And it's funny because we talked about this yesterday in my senior seminar class. It's because slavery in relation to racism, it's a taught behavior. It's not something that you come out of the womb and you're like, okay, I'm not gonna white people, I'm not gonna like Black people. It's a age-old idea that's taught generation after generation. So I think that's why we discuss it, because it's something that keeps being taught. So we have to discuss it and combat it every so often, every year.
Okay. Anybody else? How about you, Mr. McKee? We'll go ahead and grab a male perspective.
I feel like because slavery is still going on to this day.
And how?
Like how I set up, like it's only like Black men get like low end jobs. Do the white people get more like better? White men get more better jobs.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else before I turn it over back to Professor Cabiness?
I would also say to piggyback off what everyone's been saying, with slavery, there was effects of slavery, and I still feel like the Black community and African Americans deal with the effects of slavery. So that's why Booker T. Washington touched on coming up from slavery and leaving those things, because once slavery happened, we still had segregation. But just because slavery occurred doesn't mean it was technically over. We still had to deal, and even are still dealing with the effects of slavery.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, I turn it back over to you, Professor Cabiness.
Yeah, I'm going to make this very quick. I like to give anecdotes, little stories, sometimes about other things than my own experience. But this time I want to give something quick about my own experience. About 4 months ago, the Korean-run laundry and dry cleaners that I had patronized for a couple of years did an excellent job on my clothes, my suits, my slacks, my shirts. Closed. They had some internal problems in their business and they stopped providing that service. And then I decided to try to find some way to get my shirts done at least. There was another place farther away where I could get my suits done, but I found someone that was in the business of picking up my laundry and doing my shirts, but they didn't press the shirts, but they folded them nicely. And I was paying the first business over $100 a month for my cleaning and laundry. And the second business, because they didn't do the ironing, I only had to pay about half as much. And I started thinking, why am I paying anybody at all? Because when I was a child going to school in Tuskegee, and I was going to the St. Joseph Catholic School down the road from the campus, my mother taught me how to do my own shirts and press my own slacks. I didn't get to do dry cleaning, but I was able to keep myself neat. So I said, why don't I just start doing my own laundry like I did years ago, 70 years ago, when I was enjoying doing it as a child, because I like to look nice going to school. So I bought, not an industrial size, but I bought a pressing machine about a fourth of the size of the ones you'd see in a regular laundry or dry cleaners, but it worked the same way. And my wife and I had bought a large washer and dryer set years ago, and she taught me how to use it because I hadn't been doing my own shirts. And the shirt that I'm wearing now, not boasting, but I did this myself. My point is this, that Booker T. Washington was trying to teach us how to do things for ourselves so we could keep our money in our own homes and in our own community, so we could build capital eventually so that we could enlarge our enterprises and have other people coming to us the same way the Koreans had me coming to them. But it seems that over the years, we got lazy, if you want to say that, but we certainly got complacent. And we were more satisfied to take our money and give it to some other community so they could buy more real estate, more land, send their children to more colleges, and while we continue to beg. So that shutting down of the laundry business by my Korean friend was really a lesson for me to start doing something for myself. So now I do my own church, and I'm getting into where I can do pressing my suits. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to do what I did. I'm just trying to make a point. The more things that our community, as we did when I was growing up in Tuskegee before integration, when Tuskegee was a self-sufficient entity, the campus was pretty much. The more we can begin to do for ourselves, the more we're going to rise up in the esteem of the world. One more final point. So as I began to do what I just mentioned, I said, well, I need to get some easy iron shirts, make it easier for me. So I started looking for deals. So I bought about 8 easy iron shirts. I didn't really need to buy any more because I already had a lot that were able to be easily ironed. But then I got into a regimen, a habit of wanting to look online to find deals to buy shirts. And it almost became like an addiction. And I really had blocked myself just recently in the last couple of days from going online to buy some new shirts. We have to break the habit of being addicted to spending our money, giving our money to somebody else. Now, if we don't need things, why do we keep buying things that we don't need? I have to ask myself this question every week when the inside thrill of buying something begins to pull on me. So Booker T. Washington said we need to resist that inside thrill. He did not use that term, that's my term, of spending our money, especially with somebody outside of our community, and start becoming more conscious of the need to build capital by being frugal so we can build industries and employ our own people. I thank you very much for this opportunity, Dr. Daniels. It's been a great pleasure.
As always, Brother Cabiness, thank you so much for your words. And I'm not even going to say nothing else because I want to stay in that space. I will open it up to any other students if you like to say anything before we conclude. All right. Well, thank you so much for those who were able to join today. I'll leave with just this one lesson. I'm pleased to see that we have 3 students, Mr. Ford, Ms. Hunter, and Ms. Ballard, who they didn't present today because they presented previously, but they showed up. If I can leave this for everybody. I didn't advertise that Professor Cabiness was going to be here, primarily because I didn't send my request to him until late last night. And the fact that he picked up the call and said he would be glad to join us and came prepared says a lot about his character and his commitment to passing down this information. And for you all, what I'll leave you with is you never, ever, ever know when an opportunity will present itself. And there are a lot of other people in the class who said, well, I presented and I did, so I don't need to be here. But for the 3 that are here, you showing up and showing support to your classmates means that you were able to take advantage of an opportunity that is become a great pleasure of mine for every class. And I think for you all, after spending all semester learning about Professor Cabiness's bloodline through Dr. Washington, I figured this would be one of the greatest, in my mind, greatest treats for you all is to be able to connect directly to Dr. Washington through his oldest male living descendant. So thank you all. It's been an amazing class. If you have not already completed a survey for the class, please do complete the survey so that we can see how we can improve on offering this information to you all. And yes, outside the 2 people, Mr. Ford and Ms. Ballard, everyone else can go. I just wanted y'all to stick around for a second. And then Professor Cabiness, thank you so much. I will be glad to share the link with you of the other presentations in addition to the one today. That way you get a chance to have a full breadth of what students have been speaking about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I have another meeting, so I'm going to sign off. But to all of you students, keep up the good work. To Professor Dr. Daniels, you're amazing. And may God continue to bless you with what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So everyone, I will see you all later. And
I have a question.
yes.
So I sent you an email yesterday about grading the assignments because I just want to know what my grade was.
Can you hang around for a second as well?
Dr. Daniels, I actually want to know the same answer to the question she just asked.
Did you turn something new in or is it old?
It's new, but hold on one second, because I don't have a computer right now, so I'm trying to make sure I sent it.
Let me see.
Dr. Daniels, I also sent mine on Monday. I emailed it, but I also sent it because the link was open for the Atlanta exposition speech, just my redo of it. So I just wanted to let you know that I submitted it into Blackboard, but I also emailed it to you in an email as well.
Okay, I saw the one that you emailed. And Ms. Bacon, was yours the one, did you send it to me? That's educational philosophy?
I'm Miss Hunter.
Oh, Ms. Hunter, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm looking at it now and it says I have no sent email to you. So I have to probably just email it back to you, but I gotta figure out how to get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And let me hit Mr. Ford real quick and Ms. Ballard. Ms. Ballard, you said your mic won't unmute. Okay, please give me a call at 732-207-1659. I just put my phone number. If you give me a call, let's say maybe 9:40. And then Mr. Ford.
Yes, sir.
Was it worth was it worth the while?
Yes, sir. That's what I was driving, so I wasn't talking too much, but I was listening.
I know you had some things to do. I just wanted to make sure that it was fulfilling for you.
Oh yes, it was.
Awesome. All right. Well, you be safe, and if I don't see you before you graduate, continue to do the great work that you're doing, and much success going forward.
But one day we'll meet in person, sir. Definitely.
All right, Miss Richmond, unless Miss Wade and Miss Najula, did you have anything for me?
No, thank you.
Well,
Okay.
I just have a quick. I don't know if you already answered it. I've been moving around a little bit, but when we do our resubmission, I already submitted it like a minute ago, but I revised it and stuff. Am I supposed? I resubmitted it on Blackboard. Was I supposed to send you an email as well?
No, if you submitted it on Blackboard, it will register on my end.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And you said the test for me will open at 10 to 11.
Yes.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Actually, it should be visible now. You still there, Ms. Najula?
Let me check it.
All right, so you have a nice day, sir.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
Okay.
I'll check it, and if it's not showing up, I'll shoot you an email.
Okay.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you too. All right, let's look at yours, Miss Richmond. Okay. All right, so the purpose of the land exercise is to put brains and skill into the common occupations of life. Person receive the goal of economic gain, working together in the context of business, with seeking foreign assistance, so at the same time, for great encouragement to both races, still progress. Person speaking on a level. Known as Southern white people, definitely okay. Passing down your bucket speaks of white Americans in the South who seek help in new innovations, aggression, counter, making up 1/3 that refuse to this is yes. Let's do it. Closing so that during that time. Labor skill, trades, international, news about the water rate, moreover. That's back in the myself back in the speech and writers. Yeah, looks good to me. It looks like you hit each of the points. The only one I would say probably would need a little elaboration is the casting down your bucket.
Yes, sir. Is that for the educational philosophy?
You say what?
That's for the educational philosophy.
I'm looking at the Atlanta Exposition speech that you submitted.
Yes, sir. And I sent the educational philosophy.
You said that too? Okay, let me pull that up. I mean, right now, looking at that one, it looks like you, hold on a second, let me do this.